On the 5th of March 2024, a situation broke out in the neonatal unit within Yeovil District Hospital in Somerset. An incident that would end the life of a premature baby, see a mother devastated and a father locked up for the foreseeable future, all because of an argument that had erupted between the pair. Doctors ran around trying to save this baby's life, but unfortunately there would be nothing they could do to save him. This is the case of baby Brendan. When 21-year-old Sophie gave birth to her baby early at 33 weeks, her and her partner Daniel Gunter, who was 27, were worried. Their little baby, who they named Brendan, was born on the 20th of February 2024. He only weighed less than a couple of bags of sugar, and due to him being premature, their son was looked after in the specialist care baby unit at Yeovil District Hospital in Somerset. Apart from him being premature, in all other respects, he was a healthy baby. On the 5th of March 2024, when Brendan was a couple of weeks old, the couple had been sat in their room with him. Every now and again, the nurses would come in and check on him, make sure he was drinking and he was clean, etc. Baby Brendan seemed good. He did not need oxygen. He was not jaundiced. His hearing test had come back fine, and he was being cuddled by his parents on their knees in their room. But the nurses were not fully comfortable with this situation. On occasion, when they entered the room, they could hear Mr. Gunter shouting at his girlfriend. They would hear Daniel getting angry if the baby accidentally peed on him during a nappy change, or if the baby would not drink when Mr. Gunter wanted him to. But Daniel would do strange things, like suddenly decide to move the baby's nasogastric tube, placing it onto the incubator. He would tickle the baby, and he would do things to overstimulate the baby. The nurse would tell him to stop fussing, to let Brendan rest, to let him have some peace. But Daniel felt like he knew better and just did exactly what he felt he wanted to do, getting frustrated with the nurses and his girlfriend. Now, apparently the young couple had met shortly after Sophie had left the foster care system. They'd had this on and off relationship, and apparently Daniel could be quite violent towards her. After Brendan's birth, the couple would visit quite regularly and sit by his bedside. It had also been told to the couple that they would be losing custody of their child before it was time for the baby to go home. Now, nurses were aware of emotional tensions between Sophie and Daniel. On the day this case began, Sophie was found crying next to Brendan's bed. The nurse asked if she was okay, and apparently Sophie said that she just didn't want to be with Daniel anymore. Nurses did try and console Sophie. They kept going out, her and Daniel, for a smoke, and then they would come back in. Sophie was seen crying on a couple of occasions. She explained that she was upset because Daniel had told her that he was not the father of the baby. Now, throughout the evening of the 4th of March, the couple did continue arguing over whether Daniel was Brendan's real father, and at one point, Sophie was heard shouting, "Just go, just leave me alone." Sophie and Daniel's parents and other relatives visited Brendan in hospital for the first time. They were all excited to meet him. Despite him being early, they were pleased that he seemed to be healthy and he was doing well. The nurses were documenting everything and passing it over to social services. Brendan now had a caseworker, and she came by several times to see Brendan, speak with the parents over what was going to happen next, and discuss with the nurse in charge about his care. The nurse had walked in to see if Brendan was okay and noted that he was being cuddled by his father. She asked if Brendan was okay, and his father said yes. But then Sophie approached the nurse's station sometime during the early hours of the morning. She described her baby as feeling cold to touch and was worried. The nurse came straight in to check, carrying him over to the incubator to assess him. Brendan was floppy and looked like he had injuries. There was bruising and swelling. The nurses pressed the emergency call button and the doctors rushed in to try and save Brendan's life, all while Daniel Gunter walked out of the hospital for a cigarette, leaving the nurses and doctors desperately attempting to resuscitate his son. But sadly, at just before 5 a.m, Brendan died. Brendan, who had only weighed 1.83 kilograms at birth, was carried to the resuscitation area but did not respond to treatment and eventually died at 4:59 a.m. Doctors were concerned after bruising and swelling started to become evident, as well as bones seemingly not moving normally. It seemed that Brendan had suffered some terrible injuries. Had someone dropped him from a height? After his death, doctors scanned his body to see what injuries he had suffered. It was then that they fully realised the extent of Brendan's injuries. He had sustained catastrophic and fatal injuries from head to toe. Daniel Gunter and his girlfriend Sophie were arrested. They both denied harming their baby. Sophie was devastated, shouting, "No, my baby's dead. You're telling me my baby's dead. I didn't kill my baby. It's his dad. It wouldn't be me. It would be his dad." Police questioned the pair, explaining to them that the baby had suffered injuries from his head, neck, legs and jaw. During the court process, Brendan's mother, Sophie, was eventually acquitted. During the trial, the jury was told by the nurse how Daniel was repeatedly told to stop handling, overstimulating and fussing over baby Brendan by tickling him, poking him and just not allowing him to rest. They also told how Daniel was witnessed being rough with Brendan and becoming angry with him when Brendan urinated on him during nappy changes. In the hours before Brendan's death, the nurses on duty noticed that Daniel's demeanour had changed. The court was told that by 3:30 to 3:45 a.m, Brendan was with Mr. Gunter. She looked in and asked if he was okay, to which Daniel had replied, "Yes, he's all right," but in a way that the nurse considered odd. His reply did not seem natural at all. He seemed quite excitable, his response was unusually animated, and he was nodding profusely. The nurse thought that it was as if he didn't want her to go over, but this wasn't the first time Daniel's behaviours had been odd. The jury were also told about how Daniel emotionally was abusive and controlling towards his girlfriend and mother of his child, Sophie. Apparently their relationship was one of those that was very on and then off again due to arguing and his behaviour towards her. The jury were told how he controlled her finances, telling her what she could and couldn't spend, giving her ridiculously small amounts to buy food. He would also control who she could speak to, who she could spend time with, and also told her when or what she could eat. He also told her when she was allowed to smoke. It also seemed that he controlled who she spoke to in the respect of a mobile phone, as the couple ended up having to share one, including sharing a laptop and an email address so that he could check her messages and see who she was reaching out to. Daniel would on occasion even send messages from her phone or laptop pretending to be Sophie. Several medical experts also gave evidence that described the injuries inflicted on Brendan as being sustained to his skull, face, chin, nose, eyes and cheek, his neck, his torso, his left hand, legs and feet, fractures caused by twisting and pulling and significant internal bleeding, to which in simple terms, very severe force was brought to bear on Brendan. His skull was shattered and his neck was broken. One way in which these injuries could have occurred was if Brendan had been held by his legs and swung forcibly, causing his head and neck to move excessively and his head to impact multiple times on a blunt object such as a chair or table that were in the room. Medical experts described Brendan's injuries akin to a fall from a multi-storey building. Daniel was described in court as having a very low IQ and was very immature for his age. Dr. Langton described Daniel Gunter's childhood as disruptive, said that he had been excluded from schools, he ran away often, and the barrister highlighted to the court that he Although he had no previous convictions for violence, he only had one caution for throwing a bottle of water over an ex-partner. But I suppose that doesn't mean that there hasn't been anything like that involved. It just might mean that somebody's never come forward to police and reported it. Now, during his trial, jurors heard how Daniel Gunter repeatedly ignored the advice of the nurses, taking Brendan out of his incubator without asking, overstimulating him, removing his nasogastric tube, and family members witnessed Daniel shouting and becoming angry at Brendan, as well as handling him roughly inside the room. Before Brendan's birth, Sophie and Daniel had been told by authorities that they planned to remove their baby from their care. The prosecution claimed in court that Daniel's actions were born out of frustration, out of rage and insecurity of not knowing whether he was the father of the baby or not. He was angry that Brendan was the reason why Sophie might be forced to live separately away from him if the baby did come home. And Daniel had come to the realization that Brendan had the potential at least to be the focus of Sophie's life, pushing him to the sidelines. At Bristol Crown Court, the jury found Daniel Gunter guilty of murdering his newborn baby Brendan in Yeovil Hospital in Somerset. The judge described Brendan as a highly vulnerable victim murdered by his own father, who was meant to be responsible for his care and safety while in the hospital setting. He found the murder was one of excessive violence, given the extent of Brendan's injuries and the way that he had inflicted them upon him. Sentencing 27-year-old Daniel Gunter, the judge said he would serve a minimum of 20 years behind bars. The senior investigating officer, Detective Chief Inspector Nadine Partridge, from the Major Crime Investigation Team said that Daniel Gunter's actions against Brendan were diabolical and that the innocent baby had a potential happy and long future that had been taken away from him. The injuries which Brendan sustained were catastrophic, and there wasn't a part of his body that wasn't bruised, swollen or broken. To think that somebody could do that to an innocent child breaks my heart. I would like to give my condolences to Brendan's wider family, who have all been affected by his death, and they have been incredibly brave when supporting the investigation. This has been a long and complex investigation involving several different departments and outside agencies, and I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to everyone who assisted us in getting this case across the line and brought to justice. Daniel Gunter's father, Simon Gunter, paid tribute to his grandson and described the devastating impact of his death. He was so tiny, so beautiful, he was just perfect, Simon said. Brendan was my first grandchild from my first child. As a family, we were so happy and excited about him coming into the world. My family and I were fortunate enough to have met Brendan in the hospital during his short life. We held him, we gave him cuddles. Mr. Gunter described how time stopped still when they were informed that Brendan had died, and how he was unable to speak to his son since. Members of Brendan's family visited him in the mortuary and arranged a funeral to give him a beautiful send-off. We will never see him crawl, his first steps, his first word, Simon Gunter said in a statement. He didn't even have a chance to give us his first smile.